Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at BTB World. Beauty, as we all understand, is that one powerful force which not only impacts our perception of ourselves, it is also something which of course impacts our perception of others too. Having said that, we do see and observe the fact that the definition of beauty is something which is subjective. It is something which has evolved over time, that too in different societies. To name a few examples here, it's very important to then note that in ancient Greece, there was a time where the idea of beauty was such that it stressed upon facial symmetry and facial proportion too. In contrast, in Victorian England, we also see that the beauty was then associated back then with women's modesty and of course with women's restraint. In contrast, how do we see the idea of Pakistani beauty ideals changing over a period of time? This is something upon which we'll be shedding light during the course of today's conversation. Overall, we'll try and of course educate our audience with regards to the factors which also influence the changing beauty narratives. In this regard, it's very important then to also talk about the growing usage of cosmetic aesthetic treatments, and in this regard we'll be talking about both the advantages and of course the disadvantages of the same too. More particularly, we'll also be talking about the role of the social media too in this regard, that how has social media impacted the way we consider beauty, the way we of course consider the perfect body size or body image to be. And in this regard, we'll also be talking about how this in turn actually impacts our mental health. This and much more to follow on today's show, that too with a very diverse panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Ms. Sara Zahid, who is a social media influencer. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Alongside her, I have Dr. Alia Aftab, who is a psychologist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
My third panelist for the show today is Dr. Kamran Qureshi, who is an international aesthetic physician. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You're most welcome. And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Miss Nadia Hussain Khan, who is an actress, she's a model, and she's also a beautician. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you very much for having me in the show.
Ms. Nadia, I would like to start the show with you. At the very outset, the first question that I would want to put to you is the fact that we have seen that in the Pakistani society, the beauty narratives, the definition of beauty, they have been evolving constantly. In this regard, from your own personal experience of being both a model as well as an actress in Pakistan, how do you see these standards evolving from the time that you entered the industry to what they are now? And to what extent do you believe do cosmetic aesthetic treatments influence these standards too?
From the time that I started in the modeling industry, at that time actually I believe that beauty was very limited to a certain kind of looks and physique and the structure of the body. There was a lot of emphasis on being thin. I remember coming into the modeling industry, and I was not always very thin. Initially, when I'd entered, I was tall, but I was a bit broad. And I used to have issues with a lot of designers telling me that you're not going to fit in our clothes because you're not thin enough. So I actually did have to lose a bit of weight, which actually happened over a period of time. I didn't really make a very, very concerted effort towards that because being tall and already having been accepted in the modeling industry, I felt that it was okay for me to be a certain way, to be the way that I was. But yes, it did affect me in a way that I did work towards losing weight. And even after I had the babies, I had to work on myself to lose the weight. As far as looks were concerned, you know, there was always this whitewashing kind of a demand, you know, that everybody would have to be a certain color, you know. Even though that there was females and models who were already a bit on the dark and dusky side, but it was very difficult for them to break into the modeling industry. But I feel that over a period of time, things have improved. There is a lot more acceptability of a lot more various types of features and colors, and even as far as body positivity is concerned, you know, so there are lots more models coming into this industry and lots more celebrities who are a lot more different in body shapes from the conventional models. So I feel that a lot has changed, and that has got to do with social media. Now, as far as aesthetics is concerned, aesthetic treatments have always been there, but now I think it's a lot more acceptable to use aesthetic treatments to slow the aging process and to enhance certain features, especially as far as the lips are concerned or as far as cheeks are concerned. But that is all a very personal decision. It is not something that is influenced by beauty standards.
That's very rightly put by yourself. But in addition to that, one thing that I would want to add is that other than the fact that social media and of course a growing usage of aesthetic treatments have had that impact of redefining our beauty contours, one thing we must not basically miss is the fact that when we do talk about beauty, the way beauty is seen in different societies and different cultures, that is also a very predominant factor so as to actually relay and determine the beauty standards of that very particular society, on which I'll come to you. I remember the fact when we talk about beauty standards, we have seen world over that what might be considered to be beautiful in one country might not be the case in another. For example, if you talk about Brazil, their people, they are very comfortable in having a tanned skin. But when we talk about perhaps USA, there might be, kind of diverse opinions right there. But when we talk about our Pakistani society particularly, how do you see these trends evolving over a period of time, and that particularly from the viewpoint of a social media influencer?
Okay, so now I believe that beauty standards have kind of gotten global because of the use of social media, because of how connected the world is. For example, like usually now we look at the Kardashians as like this sort of key opinion leader when it comes to body shapes. Like when they got curvy, curvy was in. Now they're losing weight, so skinny is in. So I feel like usually Western Hollywood celebrities are the ones who are really shaping, what are beauty standards. Of course, cultural biases will exist. I feel like the preference of having fairer skin, this is generational. Our grandmothers passed it down to our mothers passed it down to us.
But do you not feel, Sara, that over a period of time, more particularly in the past few years, we have seen that obsession kind of diminishing? We do see dark skin models making their way to magazine covers. We see chubby actresses too in the industry, and they've done quite well for themselves too. So I overall feel what she said was very right in terms of the diversity, in terms of the inclusion of the beauty standards. They in themselves have evolved, on which I'll come to you, Dr. Saiba. Here it's very important to then talk about the correlation between beauty standards and how they in turn impact our mental health, because a lot of times we see that social media puts a lot of pressure on you to look good, to have that perfect body type. So as a psychologist yourself, what kind of an impact does this leave on anybody's mental health?
You see, it varies from person to person. You can't say that it's going to be universal, because obviously everybody is different. But people who come to me, they are very insecure about their looks, and they have something about their body shape. We call it body dysphoria, BDD. Like, it's not a disorder, but this is how people look at themselves, at the bodies. So they feel, oh my God, my lips are not the same as this model is. And oh my God, my nose is not the same. So they have these insecurities within them. And to address the insecurities, they go through these procedures. Well, it's a personal choice altogether, with nothing against it. But what happens that I've seen that people who go through rhinoplasty, like nose procedures, they suffer from anxiety more.
Right, Dr. Alia, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Dr. Kamran. And here we must talk about the most popular cosmetic aesthetic treatments. Now, I was reading this basically survey which suggested the fact that in the US, lip fillers are most popular and sought after. And by that virtue, in Iran, basically nose jobs are very popular. But when it comes to Pakistan and our Pakistani society, which are those most popular cosmetic aesthetic treatments?
Thank you so much, Fatma.
You're most welcome.
Fatma, the thing is that for the last decade, fillers and Botox have been the number one, and that is universal, and so is in Pakistan also. But if you look at the population which can afford to get Botox and fillers, that is a very small percentage of people, because these are expensive procedures. So when we come down to purely aesthetic procedures, I would say that Botox, fillers, those would be the number 1, 2 procedures that are sought after.
Right. And this is only for women or for men too, presumably, because we've also seen this trend where a lot of men are very conscious about the way they look, and they are also, of course, in this rat race to compete with women when it comes to redefining beauty.
When I started my practice around 7-8 years back, when I shifted towards the aesthetic dermatology field, at that time it was a predominant, still it is dominant by the women population, but the last couple of years we've seen a change. Around 25 to 30% now are male, and the topmost procedure that is by male is Botox,
Right.
fillers, and in some circumstances lip fillers also. So,
Really?
yeah.
So it's basically then not the celebrity man out there who are seeking all these treatments, it's also the regular average Pakistani man.
Yes, it is a regular average Pakistani man, and then laser hair removal. But in men, still hair transplant would be the first treatment, and then anything to do with hair, then we would move on to laser hair removal as a sought after procedure, then fillers, Botox.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Nadia, and here we must also talk about the need to reshape conversations when it comes to our obsession with fair skin. So how do you as a model and actress in your own right feel trends with regards to Pakistan's obsession with fair skin? They have evolved over time. Have we been able to get over that fair complexion complex or that Gora complex, so to speak?
The Gora complex is still there, and with the advancement of medicine, with glutathione coming into the picture in the past, like I would say 4-5 years, a lot more women are resorting to injecting themselves to make their skin brighter, to make their skin, I don't say that it is going to make you white, but yes, it is going to brighten your complexion a little bit. You really cannot change your complexion completely, but it is going to make a slight difference in your color complexion. So a lot more women are actually coming for these injections. They are wanting whitening treatments. So that is definitely still a very, very big problem.
And that is unfortunate, because if we talk about beauty, beauty ideally shouldn't be something which is just superficial. It should be something which comes in all shapes and all sizes and all colors. But moving on, Ms. Nadia, here a very important question then arises is the fact that when we talk about the role of public figures and celebrities like yourself, what responsibility lies on people like yourself so as to educate people about, the dangers of obsessing over skin color?
So as a celebrity and as a salon owner and as an owner of a makeup brand, I keep on educating my customers, my clients, that your skin complexion is something that you really can't change a lot, and especially as far as makeup is concerned, if you're going to want to whitewash your face, it's really going to look unnatural. So it's best to stay within your complexion. You can enhance your features with makeup, but if you're going to want to change your color complexion completely, it's going to look very clownish and it's not going to look nice. I do a lot of makeup tutorials and I do a lot of makeup classes all over Pakistan, and in Punjab, I feel that there is still a lot more of that demand of being white and being Gora, and changing the color complexion and having a very pasty, white, cakey foundation look, and they are really happy with that.
Right, madam, your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, Sarah, and here again your narrative becomes equally important. So she very comprehensively explained the responsibility which must vest on celebrities like her. But what about the role of social media influencers like yourself? Whenever they are promoting certain skincare or beauty trends, they might perhaps do it behind the lens of a filtered selfie, which in itself is very deceptive for the average person out there.
Yeah. So when it comes to this obsession with being Gora, I feel like it's a very complex issue. It's a generational trauma, like I talked about it before. And I feel like more than being affected through social media, a lot of people are affected by the opinions of their loved ones. They've grown up hearing stuff. And when they come to social media, that just becomes validated. So to fix this issue, we need to go for a very complex sort of, and we should also be really sensitive about it.
Right.
So if somebody wants like a very fair makeup done, we should not look condescending, like we should not look down upon them. This is not something condescending, because for example, we need to understand the kind of trauma that they have been through and what they are willing to do to be accepted by their family, or to achieve that certain social status. When it comes to social media influencers, definitely there should be transparency.
Right.
And I feel like now these social media platforms need to have some sort of like disclaimer or some sort of something up there.
But in addition to that, at a very core level, we need to ensure that the content that they are posting, they need to be very clear about the fact that yes, this is something I genuinely endorse and this is something which is sponsored. So that line of distinction, that in itself is very clear. Dr. Saab, your narrative here again becomes very important, more particularly from, of course, the medical science viewpoint. So when it comes to people like the ones that we have mentioned, those who are very obsessed with becoming fair, and you know, typically if patients like these come to you, how do you actually counsel them? Because here people like yourself also have a very important responsibility vested on them, so as to give the patient real goals, because a lot of times we see that there is this clash between the ideal patient expectation and what they want to seek being unsafe.
I totally agree with you, Fatma, that a lot of onus comes on to us as aesthetic practitioners, because we are doing what they are demanding. So if we don't do what they demand, people are losing money.
Right.
So it has become a very commercial kind of a thing, and these people require psychological support.
Right.
They require a support from the society, their family. So it's not just an issue like if I tell someone that, look here, this is not needed and everything, she's going to go back into that same house or the same society. I can tell you, I received a call around 4 days back, and this girl, she calls me and she says that her 1-week-old child, she's dark.
Oh my God.
And she said that her mother-in-law is saying that you have given birth to a darker colored child.
Right.
And what can I do about it? So I just told her that
it's just very sad and unfortunate. I agree with what you're saying, that you know, you shouldn't condescend somebody who wants to be a certain way, be it a certain color, be it of a certain size, but at the same time this pressure shouldn't just consume their entire lives, like Dr. very rightly so said. But Dr. Alia, coming towards you, so when it comes to drawing that distinction between somebody who genuinely wants to have cosmetic aesthetic procedures so as to boost their self-confidence, and somebody who's doing it perhaps because they are suffering from some kind of a mental illness, how is that distinction made? Because this in itself would be a very challenging task for people like you too.
You see, it's very difficult because when people come to us, some are very beauty conscious. They're really, really beauty conscious. And there's a rat race going on because the society they move in condemns them if they are not, they don't look a certain way. So they're very particular about their body especially. But some people are so insecure from the family and stuff that they just want it because of social pressure. And sometimes I've called their families even, and I've spoken to them that accept them the way it is,
that
because
is
they'll
very
have
important,
it done.
because sometimes the person is fine, but there are so many external factors who are actually triggering that kind of a response. So when it comes to the requisite psychological interventions, what kind of therapies, what kind of techniques do people like yourself use so as to inculcate that self-love, that self-acceptance in people?
You see, first of all, love yourself the way you are, because beauty lies from within.
Right.
As we say, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. It's not something outside, as you mentioned yourself even. So we have to give family therapy. It's just not the person, it's the whole family that is interlinked with each other. And we have to call them again and again, and we have to change their mindset, their beliefs. Let's call it their beliefs, because it's born within them.
Right.
It's integrated within them. And it's not very easy, but sometimes I say things are not like impossible. Things are difficult. Try and try again until you succeed.
So it's a long, consistent procedure.
It's a long process.
Dr. But here again, I think one more important thing which we must address is the fact that a lot of times people come to a cosmetic aesthetic dermatologists or physicians like yourself so as to enhance their natural beauty, which of course is their right because it is a personal choice. But do you ever come across people who want to do this to an extent that they completely want to transform themselves, like be a different person altogether?
Yes, but the problem is that what Dr. Alia was also saying, when there is a very thin borderline between if it is a body dysmorphia or is it actually what they want, and is it actually is it needed over there?
It's a genuine client.
But yes, there are people, but they do not want a total transformation. Even they don't know what they want. And that is the tricky part.
Right. So all the responsibility then comes on people like yourself. Right. So then how do you actually counsel them? Because here again, counseling is very important, Dr. Saab, too, because you need to ensure that you give them realistic expectations, but you do it in a manner which is safe for them.
See, you have to spend time with them. I believe the best time is the consult. Doing the procedure is just like 10, 15, 20 minutes of a job. It's basically the consult which is important, where you get to know what actually is going on in their mind.
Right.
And then you need to ask some leading questions also. You need to ask them, whom are they getting it done for?
Right.
Is it for themselves? Is it to please someone else? So these questions become a big important thing for us when we are designing any treatment plan for them.
Right.
Because it makes our life easier, it makes their life easier.
You know their end goal, and according to that, you would then advise treatments accordingly.
In fact, we would create some realistic expectations together as a team. Not their goals, not my goals.
Okay.
And this is at least the difference which I'm trying to bring out in whatever way we are practicing, is that do not force procedures onto someone.
Right.
Try to listen to them, try to define a treatment plan which is based on realistic expectations.
Right. Right.
So it becomes easier then.
It becomes easier then. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Nadia. Since you also perform such procedures, we would want to have your viewpoint on this particular issue too. So when people come to people like yourself, how do you make that balancing act of ensuring that your patients' expectations, they are met, but they are met in a way which is of course safe for them?
Aesthetic treatments are definitely something which is controversial, and even though I am in this field that I do aesthetic treatments myself, I have even done these procedures on my own self, and I even do it for my clients at my salon because I have an aesthetics setup at my salon. So but I truly feel that this is a very personal decision. I don't think that it is something that anybody else can force you to do. Because it's a very personal decision, you might be influenced, yes, and that is something that you, as a doctor, I myself believe that it is my job to educate the client that yes, there are certain kinds of procedures that you can get done to enhance certain things, but there is no way that you can completely change your face. So yes, you can, for example, enhance your eyebrows, you can enhance your cheekbones, you can enhance your lips, you can get a facelift treatment done to tighten your skin, but you know, like, it is still not going to completely change your features. If you are looking a certain way, you cannot end up looking like another person unless you're going to get like multiple surgeries done, and that is of course very, very costly as well. So I really don't think that for the time being, people in Pakistan or anywhere else, even abroad anywhere, people don't go to that extreme length. Yes, I feel that aesthetic treatments should be used to keep your skin looking a certain way. If you have acne scars, you can get aesthetic treatments done to get rid of those scars, to lighten those scars. If you have pigmentation, you can get treatments done to lighten those pigmentations. If you have an acne problem, you can get treatment done for that. But these are all treatments that need to be repeated again and again. It is not something that is completely permanent. Yes, you can get a surgical nose job done, which can enhance your nose features. But again, that's something that is costly. So if anybody who is affording and if they are willing to get it done, then it is definitely something that comes from a very personal side as well. It might be influenced by beauty standards and it might be influenced by social media, but it is something that is a personal decision at the end of the day.
That's very rightly put by yourself, that it is a personal choice, but at the end of the day, the patient themselves, they need to be counseled well and they need to have realistic expectations too. But moving on, do you not feel that when we talk about this core issue of getting the most sought after cosmetic aesthetic treatments, one thing which is very paramount is one's love for oneself, because a lot of times we see that a lot of people might end up getting such treatments, but they might not be happy or satisfied with the same, because this is something which is not coming coming from within, do you not feel then at a very basic level that, one needs to love oneself first and only after that everything else falls into line?
It is about your own mental space, what mental space you are in. How is it that you are viewing yourself as a person? So I think that a lot has got to do with viewing your own self. I think it has got a lot to do with your own brought up, with your own influence as a child, right. Your own kind of positivity that has been instilled in you from your parents, from your siblings. If there are people around you who are going to shame you for what you are and who you are, and especially looks, right. It definitely leaves a very, very big scar on the personality. And that is something that I feel has been a problem of the past generation. Social media should be taken as a tool that it is only instilling the wrong standards. So it needs to be taken in the positive way, and about educating yourself and accepting yourself for who you are.
Coming towards you, Sara, here we must also of course talk about the role of social media influencers like yourself. Now we do see that a lot of brands engage in influencer marketing with people like yourself. So do you not feel then that it is also the responsibility of people like yourself so as to pass on those realistic beauty standards and in a way also educate the brands, because sometimes a lot of what you say also reflects on how the brands are going to project you?
So that is basically the point of influencer marketing. When we see a celebrity who is a size small, who has perfect hair, has a 5-people makeup team wearing something, it's obviously going to look good. That's where influencers come in. In Pakistan, the most popular influencers, they are not a size small. They're usually mommy bloggers with kids who are showing their entire family. Right. That's the trend I have observed. So people genuinely want to see the clothes or the makeup or on somebody they can relate to. So that is the predominant trend. You will not see very, very thin influencers. There'll be a little bit, there'll be like model/influencers who are popular on Instagram, but the real women are the ones that are really being followed. Right. But when it comes to influencers, I feel like there are more positives than negatives, because a lot of influencers are the ones that make it are transparent, because those are the ones that people can relate to. So there are two kinds of influencers, one people look up to, one they can relate to. Right. In Pakistan, I feel like people follow those that they can relate to.
On which I'll come to you, Dr. Alia. Here we must also talk about this rampant social menace of cyberbullying, of online harassment, even body shaming, which is done in the cyberspace so as to basically name and shame, of course, people for the way they look or basically for their weight. So as a psychologist, why is it so important, you feel, that at a very core level, at a very basic level, people, more particularly parents, they educate their children about being more open, more inclusive with regards to beauty standards, that too at a very young age?
You see, first of all, the parents need to be the children's friends. Because the children, when they grow up, who will they confide in? They will confide in the parents, because what's the most important thing, that the first 7 years of the child are very important. Right. Foundations of personality are laid in childhood. Whatever the parents teach the children in the childhood, when they grow up, it's going to leave their traces. Right. So they need to be strong from within. That no matter whosoever says, because you see, you have to stand up for your own right. Because if you're not going to stand up, if you're not going to speak for your own self, this is going to keep on happening, and stress is going to be there. Right. And it's going to destroy their personality. We need to accept ourselves the way we are. Yes, changes you want to do, you can do any changes you like. For example, taking my example, I believe in, okay, whatever I look, it's me. I feel happy. When I dress up, I feel happy. This is what my parents gave me. So you see, the parents, it's very important to talk about reality. What is reality? Yes, do makeup, do use whatever you want to. Sometimes on social media, you use those apps, you use those filters. That's okay. Right. But the most important thing is that stand up for your right, and you have to turn a deaf ear to someone or the other.
Right, Dr. Saiba. But here we must also, of course, talk about FOMO, which means the fear of not missing out, which has become unfortunately very rampant in the younger generation as we speak. So as a psychologist yourself, how particularly do you feel can be addressed this particular disorder, because it is something which can actually consume your mental health very adversely?
This is really growing rapidly, and we need to address it right now, because it's a rat race that's going on. People think that, okay, if he's doing this, I also need to look like that, because they get compliments and they feel uplifted. So we need to tell them that, okay, we are the way we are, it's okay for us. So we need to be self-satisfied within ourselves, and we need to address it as soon as possible. And like talking about it, accepting yourself is very important.
Dr. on which I'll come to you, when we talk about media literacy, here I personally feel that advertisements, they in themselves also play a very important role. The way you advertise something, the way you market something would kind of promote that particular beauty trend or that particular cosmetic aesthetic treatment. So in Pakistan, considering that you do have international exposure as well, when you compare our advertisement of the aesthetic industry of different various procedures, how do you compare it with different countries, be it the Middle East, be it the Western jurisdictions? Do you feel that advertisement is something which needs to be regulated so as to make sure that realistic beauty standards, they are promoted?
Okay, as far as the social media marketing is concerned, more or less it remains same all across. It's internationally, locally, wherever you see, because social media is social media.
Right.
So you cannot put too many regulations there until and unless that the social media platform in itself starts, and that is why things are becoming easier.
Right.
You can promote anything, you can sell anything online, and there is no regulation as such. But as far as the conventional marketing is concerned, we definitely see that again the regulations are there.
All these ads which are actually promoting fair skin, all these skin lightening creams, I wonder whether it would be also important for them to actually advertise the harmful effects of the same too.
See, the thing is that here advertising is something, and registering those products and to make them available, that's a totally separate issue altogether, because there is the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan which needs to register, and they're doing a good job. But at times they cannot handle it as well, because there are so many fake products coming in, there are so many things which we do not even know the ingredients of, and those are being promoted on social media.
But Dr. Saab, do you not here feel that when it comes to all these advertisement campaigns, it is their responsibility then to very clearly announce all the ingredients, all the components of the particular product which is being sold, so as to allow the consumer to make an informed choice to buy the same too?
Yes, in fact it is, and all good companies do that. All good companies. But these are those companies which do not have a standing. There are virtual companies there.
Right.
The companies which do not exist at all,
right,
but they get a product, they get it branded, and they're selling it on the social media. So yes, that is a big responsibility, and I feel that the influencers here need to take this responsibility as well,
right,
that only promote those products
which are
genuine,
which are good,
which are backed by a good company, and only then it becomes easier then, because somebody is drawing the line there, and not everyone can do that. So influencers, yes, social media platforms, but again, that is something which is a totally different subject altogether.
Right, Dr. Saab, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Sara, and before we conclude today's show, here it's equally important, something which Dr. Saab very rightly so mentioned, that we regulate the blogging industry of the country too. A lot of times we see that anybody with even a small amount of following claims to be a blogger or a social media influencer, and using that power they can practically promote anything that they so want to promote. Here, what responsibility then lies on bloggers like yourself, and why do you feel then that amongst other things, regulation of bloggers, regulation of social media influencers, that becomes extremely paramount?
Okay, so I think regulation of bloggers can't be done because it is a creative outlet, but in terms of regulation of the promotion, that can be done. So what you can do is the platform can either make it mandatory to reveal that this is a promoted post, and on the other hand, there are also formal levels of regulation. Like in the Middle East, you need a license to be an influencer, right now we don't have anything like that. But at the same time, when we talk about bloggers also promoting stuff that is not probably great, or they're going to any skincare clinic and promoting their products, on the flip side, there are also other influencers that are always informing their audience about the good clinics, about how you should not be using all these mixed creams, the creams that have mercury in them, the steroids. So it's like
they work ethically, basically.
They work ethically, and at the same time it is a complex issue. You can't just be like, okay, then it needs to be regulated, because at the end of the day it is a creative outlet. So there will be somehow, we need to just educate the audience that good opinions and bad opinions both exist on the platform, and you need to just be a little careful and do your own research, because even if I am promoting something and it works amazingly on my skin, it might not work for you.
That's very right, because even when we talk about cosmetic aesthetic procedures, a Botox or a filler, and I've seen this myself too, done on person A might not be the same way it might reflect on the other person, because everybody's anatomy or body type is very different. But coming towards you here, Dr. Alia, a lot of times we have basically emphasized on the fact that social media has a dark side to it, and in perpetuating unrealistic beauty standards, it also kind of instills those feelings of depression, of anxiety, and so many other mental disorders. But for those who do want to use social media to their advantage, how particularly do you feel can they do that?
I think social media has a very important role, and they can do that because we need to tell success stories. We need to bring in those people who are the way they are. They've been born, they haven't done anything, because basically it's something personal, but they have success story. Like I know of a transgender, and she is working in a very multinational company. She's joined politics. She goes on social media. She has her own YouTube channel,
right?
And she's promoting that accept yourself. I know of a few people whose family, like they took therapy from me and the family understood, so they are also promoting. I mean, I call them, I have my own YouTube channel, I call them and tell them. So, you know, the more we talk about it, I think the more awareness we spread, and that's the thing we need to do.
Right, Dr. Saiba, on which I'll come to you, Dr. Kamran, and before we conclude today's show, it's equally important then to also talk about the regulation which must ideally exist when it comes to regulating the aesthetics industry. Now, in this regard, we see that different countries, they have different contours, different amount of regulation. But when it comes to Pakistan, how well regulated is the cosmetic aesthetic industry here, and does it or does it not then fall under the purview of Punjab Healthcare Commission?
The only people who are regulated are the doctors. So the Punjab Healthcare Commission does have a jurisdiction onto those clinics which are not being run by doctors, but they're not doing anything about it.
Right.
So their whole thing becomes only on the doctors as such.
Right.
Now, out of the doctors also, we do not say that everyone has the necessary experience, because certification is one thing and having the necessary experience is another thing. Then when we talk about the beauticians or the aestheticians, they are allowed to do a certain amount of procedures only.
Right.
Nurses even, under the supervision of doctor. I can tell you there are clinics being run by pharmacists, because everyone in Pakistan is a doctor.
Right.
Even a physiotherapist writes doctor with him, even a pharmacist writes a doctor with him, dentist also writes a doctor, and medical doctor also writes a doctor. So I would have to give a disclaimer to my patient that I'm a medical doctor.
And that message needs to be very loud and clear. But Dr. Sahab, here again, drawing on your international experience, since you have had that benefit of working in Dubai as well, and you've traveled quite a bit all over the world too, when you do compare our regulations with the rest of the world, at what end of the spectrum does Pakistan fall? Because we have seen in comparison that as per laws, at least, Europe has the most stringent regulations and then Canada and Dubai, I would also want to add here, is basically focused on who actually is performing those procedures. So in Pakistan, is there any such prerequisite?
Okay, first of all, Dubai is the most regulated market out of all these markets. In fact, we at times say it's an over-regulated market. So I work there, I work 1 week there, 1 week here, and I have to really transform myself as far as my whole thing is concerned, because there the things are totally different. In Pakistan, no, we do not have the necessary regulations to counter to these effects. And because of that, we are having a lot of problems as far as the clients are concerned, and substandard products being used, because it's a price war right now going on, because everyone wants to do a procedure, and at times they're doing it at a price which is insanely low, in fact.
Right. Okay. And that could be harmful for you too. So these are the contours that we need to work on when we talk about regulating the cosmetic aesthetic industry, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Nadia. And before we conclude today's show, here my last question to you would then be that what is that advice that you would want to give to all the people out there, more particularly young women who are watching this show, that how is it that they can strike that balance between loving themselves for who they are, loving themselves with their imperfections, but at the same time resorting to aesthetic treatments whenever they so may need?
Yes, it is only and only about the balance. I feel that the balance was not so much initially. because, like I said, as far as the older generation is concerned, there have been lots and lots of instances where families have been not just for females, even for males, they have been demoralizing people only based on looks. And that is something that is changing now. But it is about the space that you are in, the people who you are around, and the kind of body positivity that you have for yourself. Definitely, social media does influence a lot. People also influence a lot. Influencers influence a lot. Celebrities influence a lot.
Right.
But just about your own capacity, in your own capacity, what is it that you yourself feel for yourself, and especially for the people around you, like the kind of people who you are around, that really influences a lot as far as your own personal image is concerned. So if you are unfortunately around such people, then you really need to get away from such people and interact more with people who are very, very body positive, who are positive about certain features and about accepting you for the way, for like who you are, despite your looks. Because beauty is, of course, it really is not just skin deep. It really goes way down. I mean, you could have a very, very seemingly beautiful person who is actually not a very beautiful person as far as their personality is concerned.
That's very right.
So it's really, I mean, it's a very it has to be a good mix. If there are certain things that you're a little insecure about, you can of course get aesthetic treatments done to enhance those features or to change certain features. But of course you need to be guided well by the doctor. You need to understand your own limitations. You need to understand the limitations of these aesthetic treatments as well. You need to look at your own pocket as well, whether you can afford it or not. And then you need to be in a good mental space to be able to come out of that and to be able to accept yourself for who you are and what you are.
That's very rightly put by yourself, on which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Ms. Sarah. Thank you so much, Dr. Alia. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamran. And thank you so much, Ms. Nadia. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the ever-evolving beauty narratives as they do exist in the Pakistani society. In this regard, we also spoke about the growing usage of cosmetic aesthetic treatments in the Pakistani society, whereas, of course, resorting to such procedures is definitely a personal choice. What we do need to ensure is that overall the regulation of cosmetic aesthetic industry is made a reality in Pakistan. In this regard, we definitely need stricter policies and of course stricter interventions too. Also, at a very basic level, we need to understand the fact that beauty is something which is just not superficial. Beauty is definitely more than skin deep. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.